Hi, I'm Dylan Roche, here at Roche Wines on the Naramata Bench just outside of Penticton. This week marks 1 year since the first release of our wine, Chateau, which is a blended red in the Bordeaux style. It's also the anniversary of our first Futures offer. A year ago, we sold Futures, or pre-purchase, of the 2017 vintage when it was still in the barrel. Why are we selling wine this way? Time for a little history. Something we don't often get to explain is that Penelope, my wife and co-winemaker, comes from France, from Bordeaux, and that her family was growing grapes and making wine from the early 1800s at a small but very special winery called Château des Carmes, Aubryon. When I met Penelope, she was just taking over from her father as the sixth generation of her family to be looking after the vineyard and winemaking and sales. And the sales structure at the top wineries in Bordeaux is very different from our model here in BC. Merchant companies, separate from the wineries, were the first to expand export markets for Bordeaux wines. We're talking in the 12th to the 16th centuries in London and Brussels and Moscow and Stockholm. And the tradition of selling only to this limited group of wine merchants, or négociants, remains in place. And to create excitement and enthusiasm for the new vintage, the top Chateau of Bordeaux began to get together and pour the young wines from the barrel for the merchants and their clients to sample in April following the last harvest. This is called the primeur tasting. So primeur means first youth in French. The effect was to build an incredible amount of momentum to drive sales and even speculation for that vintage long before it was bottled. The wines are presented for sampling in the first week of April. Merchants invite their clients, importers, retailers, sommeliers, journalists, and critics from around the world to come and taste. Over the next few weeks, the critics release their scores, and the merchants, brokers, and producers discuss their strategy in an elaborate and incestuous game of cat and mouse. Then the first chateau release their price. If the price is right, and the demand great enough, they may sell their entire production in the space of a few days. The merchants and brokers communicate the pricing to the importers and the retailers, who validate their orders. Although the wines must still spend another year in the barrels, they are pre-sold. They'll be bottled and delivered the following autumn, 18 months later. This system allows buyers to secure their allocation of a particular vintage and producer, usually at a better price. It allows the merchants to buy early and speculate on the future value of top wines. And it provides stable cash flow for the wineries, helping them to finance the following vintage. We named this wine Chateau because the goal was to use everything we learned in Bordeaux to make a wine from the best grapes we can grow here in the Okanagan Valley. It's a wine that's blended every year from our best lots of Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. And we don't try to repeat the blend, but rather we treat each vintage as a clean slate, and the blend follows the unique contributions of each variety in that growing season. We make it to be age-worthy, but also complex and subtle and elegant. We also thought it would be a fun exercise to make our Chateau available as futures. This week we're delivering the 2017 vintage to those who bought futures a year ago after tasting this wine from the barrels. And we're offering pre-purchase of the following vintage, Chateau 2018, starting now. Because we can't have a tasting event at the winery to show off this wine, we're going to do a virtual tasting together here. This is a sample that we've blended from the different wines we have aging in the barrels since fall 2018. We've been working on the blend for several weeks. This may not be the precise final blend that we decide on, but it is very close. What we are sure of is that the dominant variety will be Merlot for the 2018 wine, because that is what is consistently giving us the most delicious results in our blending trials. And that's kind of fun because the 2016 Chateau was based on Cabernet Franc, and the 2017 Chateau is predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon. So what we're initially impressed by with this wine is the brightness and the purity of the fruit. It really jumps out of the glass and says ripe, but fresh and clean and not jammy. I'm thinking cassis and blackberry character. And that's what follows on the palate. Lots of fruit with a hint of oak that's become part of the really seamless texture of this wine. It's still young, but the balance and freshness shows a lot of potential in a wine that we'll be drinking in 2022 or later. It looks like the blend will be 60% or more Merlot, followed by 25 to 30% Cabernet Sauvignon, and finished by 10% or so of Cabernet Franc. And out of our 3 vintages, this is actually the blend that most resembles a typical blend from Bordeaux, from Saint-Emilion or Margaux. We'll be bottling this wine in July and releasing it next spring. But you can reserve your allocation now when you buy it as a futures offer. You pay 15% less than the finished price. That's $42.42 a bottle. Futures are available in 6 or 12 bottle cases, and you pay half now and half next year when you receive your wine. You can find the Chateau 2018 futures on our website or contact us here at the winery. We'll see you next week when we taste Nuance, our other Bordeaux-style blend. And in the meantime, stay safe, and don't forget to cook good food and drink good wine. Cheers.